Hey everybody, Adam here from Menta Watches. Welcome back to the channel. Every week we're inundated with dozens of questions, whether it pertains to a watch, authenticity, or something else. So we figured we'd field some of those questions. We put out a "what do you got for us" on Instagram, and we picked out some of our favorite questions that we're going to answer for you now. So without further ado, let's jump right into it. Our first question says, how to tell if a watch has been relumed. Now, this is not really a simple answer. It takes years and years of experience and trial and error to really master whether a lume is original on a watch, and it very much varies depending on what watch it is, what year it is, and a lot of other factors that go into play. The best piece of advice I could give you is to compare your watch to other known and confirmed original examples. Buy equipment that everybody uses to measure looms, such as Geiger counters for radium watches, UV lights for tritium watches, and really try to understand what should be correct for that era, what they should look like, and when in doubt, always ask somebody who knows more than you do. Next question we have is a simple one: macroeconomic impact to vintage watch market or vintage buyers. Are most of them in it for collecting and passion? I mean, listen, it's hard to know everybody's motive when they're spending money on a watch, whether they're in it for investment or they're in it for passion. I'll say, in my personal experience, the people that are buying these high-end watches, especially in the vintage world, very much know what they're doing, and they've very much been doing it for a long time, and they're in it for generally the right reasons, i.e. they really love the watches and they're really passionate about them. Obviously, there are some buyers who think that a big purchase might appreciate in the future, but generally they love the watches that they're buying, hence they're willing to spend $300K plus on them. Next question is one that I think we should talk about. We've talked about a little bit before: the do's and don'ts of traveling with watches. So I personally don't like to travel with a large amount of watches, one, maybe two, three at the most. What I do is I never tell anybody where I'm traveling to. I never give out specific dates or schedules and where I'm traveling. When I'm staying in a hotel, if I must leave those watches in the hotel, I always put the do not disturb tag on the door so that technically no one should be entering my hotel room without me present. And also always try to stay in a hotel that has a house safe. If you have a valuable watch with you, you can leave it in the house safe. But generally, just be careful. If you're going to post on social media, always do it after you've left that area, maybe a day or two later, and never kind of tip off people to where you're going to be, and always be cognizant of your surroundings. So if you're wearing an expensive watch, maybe wear long sleeves, or maybe don't go into a crowded touristic area. Just kind of overall be smart and be aware of your surroundings. The next question is how to tell if a bracelet belongs to the watch or is an add-on / aftermarket edition. Going back to the answer I gave for the lume question, very simply, do your research. Make sure you understand what bracelet is correct for that watch. Check the date codes on those bracelets. So if it's a 1980 watch, make sure the date code is 1980 or at least close to it. Sometimes, especially with Rolex, you could have a margin of error of a couple years depending on when the bracelet was sold and when they added that bracelet. And in terms of aftermarket parts, just analyze the pictures of a correct one very carefully and compare it to the bracelet that's on the watch you're analyzing. And when in doubt, again, always ask somebody else for another opinion. The watch community is very collaborative, so if you're ever not sure, there's always going to be somebody out there willing to help you. The next question we have is, where do I start researching about models for specific years? This is where I'm at the moment, trying to find if there are interesting for my birth year. Well, I think I've talked about this in the past. I'm not a huge birth year fan collecting kind of guy, because I always think it detracts from the overall goal of finding the best watch, where people focus too much on finding a watch within a specific year range because it's a birth year watch. At the end of the day, when it's on your wrist, it doesn't really matter if it's from 1985 or 1987. You really want to go for the best watch possible and not get too bogged down looking for a specific year. That being said, with Rolex, there are some great references online, some different tables, although even within those references online, some of them vary because Rolex never released information as to what years watches were produced in. So it's all information that was collaborated by other people, by collectors, by dealers, by guys like you and I. So the information is not official. It's just what we know to the best of our knowledge. Patek Philippe, you can absolutely ask for an extract of the archives and it'll give you the exact year. A lot of other brands are similar in that regard. IWC, Vacheron, Omega. Best bet is just to Google around and look for great websites. Like, for example, on Omega, there's Speedmaster 101. With Heuer, there's On the Dash. So there's a lot of good reference websites out there, and use those as a guide. Next question we have is, from the perspective of being a dealer of vintage and modern pieces, comparing 2020 to 2022 to today, are you seeing buyers gravitate to more vintage pieces today instead of modern/new releases, or are modern/new releases still what buyers want? I mean, listen, there was obviously a big drawback on the modern market in about August, September of last year in 2022, which scared a lot of people away as the prices really started to drop and correct themselves. And a lot of people re-entered the vintage sphere thinking that that was a much safer harbor. That being said, I really haven't seen much difference. I think at the end of the day, most people are buying watches because they want them for themselves. They want it for their wrist, and they're buying what they love and what they like, and it's very subjective. I've always said that collecting modern and vintage is not mutually exclusive. You could do both. You can be into both. So I haven't really noticed a trend, and I think still buyers are buying at the same rate modern and vintage, although I have seen a lot of renewed interest in vintage and a lot of people who generally collect modern dipping their toes into the vintage market. But all this stuff's cyclical, and one year modern will be hot, the next year vintage, and so on and so forth. Probably until the end of time. Next question we have is a three-parter from a good friend of mine. First question is, how long will the jewelry watch trend last? I mean, he's talking about all these diamond baguette watches and, you know, jewelry encrusted watches that have gotten very popular in the last few years. I don't know how long the trend will last. I think it's been around for a while. It's gotten more popular in the last few years. I don't see it really going anywhere because now with social media and everything like that, people want stuff that's flashy and they want stuff that's different. So I don't see the trend going away anytime soon. And at the end of the day, most of these factory diamond set or jewelry watches are much rarer than their normal watch counterparts. So it's still always going to be a very collectible thing. Next question, will Ebel ever be cool again? Short answer, in my opinion, no. I'm not sure it was ever really cool, but I don't see it happening. And last question, what's the watch you wear the most from your personal collection? Right now, it is an Adam RP Royal Oak reference 5402A series with a tropical dial. It's always changing though. You know, I'm fortunate enough to get to wear a lot of watches, but that's the one that happens to be on my wrist the most these days. Okay, moving along. Two questions. First one is top 3 or 4 tips someone should look for when buying a vintage watch, like whether it's polished, the hallmark/authenticity, buying the dealer. I mean, you just kind of gave some great tips right there. Obviously, first and foremost, always buy the source, by the dealer, as they like to say. You can trust the source that it's coming from. Make sure you have recourse if something goes wrong. It's sometimes great to find a cheaper variant on the forums or eBay or whatever, but sometimes you're not able to return that watch if something is wrong with it. So always try to buy the source. If it's not a dealer, it's a trusted auction house or a trusted source where you have recourse. Number 2, really just do your research. You know, there's a lot of great resources online for many different brands, and there's a huge and strong community, whether it's on the forums, on Instagram. So do your research, whether it's other websites, and asking other people. I think that's really the best you could do. There's so many times that buyers get out there and they just see something flashy and shiny in front of them and they just jump to buy it, and they either overpay or they make a mistake because the watch isn't all correct. And if they had just taken their time, did a little research, or asked some other people for opinions, they might not have fallen into that trap. And the second question this person have, and he says, this one's easy, but buying a vintage watch that's engraved hurts value. Do you restore, remove it, or leave it alone? And I'm assuming he's talking about an engraving on the case back. So there are subsects of collectors who do not like engravings. Usually, for example, Asian market collectors do not like engravings on the back of watches. But I'd say in the vintage world, most other people do. And I'd even say some Asian collectors are starting to come around on it because it gives the watch some character, some history, some interesting, component to it, whether it's a birthday was given to somebody, or it was a wedding gift, or it's in honor of somebody working at a company for a long time. It shows, sometimes the year that watch was produced, because maybe it was given as a gift in 1968 and engraved on the back 1968, or it just kind of adds to the story and it's something interesting. Of course, you could remove it, you could have it filled in and then polished off if the engraving's deep, or just simply polished off. I personally always like engravings on the back of the watches. I think it just adds so much more to the story and makes the watch so much cooler, but it's a subjective thing, and obviously when it's your watch, you can do whatever you want with it. I think that is it. Okay, cool. If you have any questions, we will be doing these videos again in the future, so feel free to drop us an email and we'll add it to the list for next video. And as always, thank you guys so much for watching, and please like, comment, subscribe, and if you want, drop some questions down below, any follow-up questions, and I'll do my best to answer all of them. Thank you guys so much for watching. Have a good one.